Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be watching a video that's like, the title is very controversial. It's called Is It Still Worth Moving to Germany? This is like a little bit shocking to me because I think that Germany is one of like, at least that's what like the popular opinion, I would say. It's that Germany is like one of the greatest places, one of the greatest countries in Europe. You know, like the economy is like very strong. I think they do have some problems with like housing, like it's really expensive. But you know, like what country doesn't have that these days? But in general, I think they have like a pretty, you know, quality of life, and again, like you live pretty well. So this is quite shocking to me because apparently it isn't, or maybe it's gonna be the opposite. And it's like, yes, it is still worth it. I don't know, but let's check it out and comment, like, and subscribe.
So a question that I get asked all the time is some kind of variation of, is it still worth moving to Germany? And, you know, it's a big question. It's also a very personal question.
True.
It's really difficult to give a satisfactory answer just because...
He has a great point right from the start, because it's true. I think you can judge like a lot of things and just a lot of like metrics in general. But I think, you know, I can't ask you like, oh, is it worth, you know, moving to this place? It's like, I'm not you. I can't really answer that for you. I think it really is gonna depend on, like, again, your personal like metrics, what you prefer, what you don't like, what sort of things are you willing to sacrifice, and in order to like get more things. But maybe again, it varies depending on the person. So I think this is a very personal question. So it is true that he's like, oh, is it worth it? I don't know, like you tell me. I can lay down the facts, but at the end of the day, like you have to tell me, do you think it's worth it? I don't know, maybe because to me it's worth it. Maybe so for some other people it's gonna be like, no, absolutely not worth it. So I do think it's like a very personal question to ask, you know, people.
So much of it depends on your personal circumstance, your skills, your qualifications, your background, your desires, your goals, what you actually are expecting. For me, it's a resounding yes. I feel very much at home here, but it's probably not the best option for everyone.
Okay.
And it's only really worth it if you know what you're getting into, because Germany has changed. The cost of living has risen. Bureaucracy is still very painful.
I have to say, again, like the cost of living has gone up. Like, I think it's like a worldwide thing. I think it's like unescapable at this point. Bureaucracy, I do know that Germany is really, I think they're famous for their everything. Like you have to go through like so many hoops that it's like, why is it like this? Like this is like, again, it's like really a well-developed country. Why don't you make this easier? And just like this in general, they should be easy. Like it's all a hassle, which I think it's crazy. Like stuff should be easier and not harder.
And public attitudes, especially towards immigration, have shifted. And so in this video, I really want to give you a straight answer. I want to tell you what's still great about Germany, what's getting harder, and who this move really actually makes sense for. Now, I moved here in 2011, and in many ways, Germany was a different country back then. You know, the economy felt stable, jobs for life seemed to still be a thing, and no one was talking about immigration.
But again, I think that 2011, that's like so long ago. It doesn't seem that long because you hear like 20 something and you're like, oh, that was like 3 years ago. It's like, no, it's a really long time. It's over 10 years ago. Like that's, again, the world was a very different place, I think, like back in those days.
On the other hand, it was much harder getting set up back then. You know, even doing something as simple as opening a bank account or getting a phone contract sorted out without speaking German was extremely difficult. The digital world was still in its infancy, and online processes in general were not commonplace in Germany. And I know a lot of people like to complain about this and talk about how backwards Germany is when it comes to online processes and digital commerce. But believe me, things have developed here a lot in the last 10 years.
That's good.
And so what is it like today? Why do people still move to Germany? Well, really because Germany still has a lot to offer. The country's central location makes it a great place to be based in Europe. University is basically free, or at least very cheap. You've got public healthcare, safe cities, solid infrastructure, and more balanced pace of life compared to the UK or the US. There are very strong labor laws, which makes the job market extremely attractive for employees. And the same thing goes for renting. It's a topic for another time, but one of the reasons why over 50% of people rent in Germany is because of strong tenant protections. Landlords can't just evict you without cause. And even though things are not as secure or stable as they were
what happens if you're like a bad, because I know that obviously you want to side, obviously, like usually you want to side like, oh, landlords are like evil. And usually, not always, not to generalize, but sometimes, a lot of times it's true. But what happens if it's the opposite? What happens if like the landlord is in the right and the tenant is in the wrong, and you're being like a bad tenant? Like the law protects you even then?
Where 10 years ago, there are still many opportunities here. And I talked about this before at length, but the quality of life here is just much higher than it is back in the UK. Wages are higher in Germany than in the UK, and the cost of living is slightly.
I think that's more important, because like you're talking to me like, oh, you're telling me wages are higher. It's like, what good does it serve to me if like the cost of life is higher, and if not going to be like, even if I have like, oh, it's such a high paying job, if I'm not going to be able to like live in this place, I think I don't really care. I think at the end of the day, like, again, it's like the minimum wage or just wages in general, I think they're a bad metric, because it's like, no, I need to know like actually cost of life, not just, you're going to be earning pretty well. It's like, okay, but like if the renting an apartment is going to cost me like, I don't know, like double my salary, then, that's not good.
Slightly lower. The air is clean, the cities are green, there's a cultural respect for boundaries and order that for many people feel.
Again, weird to me, like he's from the UK, and that's what I imagine, like the countryside, probably not London, but the countryside, like the UK, like the British countryside, I think it's like that. It's like very clean air, it's very clean, people are very like, they respect their own space, so it's kind of crazy to me to hear that he's like, no, I like Germany because of this thing. So it's like, so the UK doesn't have this?
Feels refreshing. For some it might feel restrictive, but depending on where you come from, it can be really refreshing that there are rules and regulations around basic things like rubbish disposal, neighbor relations, or just communal responsibility. Work-life balance, while varying hugely.
I think this is like, I think I get what he means, but I think probably in the UK, and that's what I think it's like that, but it's like that because people tend to be like that. It's more like a social construct, like it's, it's not an enforced, like it's not law enforced. And in this case, yes, it's literally in the law, like you can't do certain things because again, it's mandated by law. In the UK, I think those are kind of like behavioral sort of like things, and a lot of people do so, but they're not, you can't actually complain if they don't, because it's like, it's not in the law. So I think maybe that's the difference. It's like, yeah, well, here's like mandated, and I can see why some people would find this like, wow, like, don't you need like laws for everything? And it's like, sometimes, yes, and like very chaotic places, maybe they need something like this to keep like people in line and in check. But maybe it's like that. If like, yes, of course you can't, like, it's one thing to be enforcing you to be polite because there's like laws against this, and there's just like one of like, there's a social expectation for you to fulfill and for you to like behave in a certain way. But of course it's different if it's literally like it's in the law. So yeah, it's not the same thing.
Between industries is a thing, and you actually get time off to spend your money, to travel, to explore, and to do whatever you want. The minimum legal holiday allowance is 20 days, but most employers offer 30 days, with many offering much more than this, depending on your role and your priorities and the company that you work for. And so if you've got a stable income, you're moving with a family, the overall quality of life is extremely high. So Germany still has a lot going for it, but it's definitely not all sunshine and rainbows. And depending on your personal situation, there are probably better options for you. So before we get into some of the reasons why you should think twice before moving here, I really want to share something with you that could make your life a lot easier, especially if you're balancing work, life, and travel across Europe like I am. So N26, which is the bank that I use in Germany, are launching a SIM. And honestly, I think it's a really good, very practical add-on. It's an eSIM, so you don't need to wait around for a SIM card to arrive in the post or go queue up in the shop. You can just activate this service directly in the N26 app and you're good to go. You get unlimited calls and texts within Germany, plus free EU roaming, and it runs on Vodafone's 5G network too. So coverage has been really solid in my experience. You can start small at 10 gigabytes per month for under 14 euros or go for the medium or large subscription plan. What's really great about this is that it's totally flexible. There are no long-term contracts. You can cancel it month to month. And if you've dealt with German phone plans or quite honestly any subscription services in Germany, you know how rare this is. Usually you are logged in for 1, if not 2 years. And it's one of the things that I really hate about living here. I already use N26 for my banking, savings and travel stuff. And so having the option to sort my mobile plan out here too is just a real win. Life in Germany can be complicated enough. Your phone plan doesn't have to be. And so if you want to make your life easier, then check the link in the description below to download the app and activate your eSIM. Use my code when signing up to get 20 euro starting bonus. Now, one thing that you should consider is the rising cost of living. Now, I mentioned that the cost of living is lower than in the UK, but that doesn't mean it's cheap. Renting might be more secure than in other countries, but rents have risen significantly in recent years. And so much so that especially young people are having to live in biggies or have roommates because they just can't afford a place by themselves. And especially...
Again, I think that's just like the nature of life these days. I think most young people will find this to be the case. And not just in Germany. I think it's just like, it's a thing of like all over the world. Like stuff, like the houses are like so incredibly expensive because I think the housing like crisis is not just in Germany. I think it's just, again, it's worldwide. So a lot of people do not really like, it's impossible for me to like, get an apartment or get a house or, just rent, something for myself. It's like, no, that's what you have to like have roommates, which I think, it tends to be, I think you would expect maybe like younger people to actually like, because technically like you would think, well, younger people earn less, but I think you'll find that a lot of people that I think are older than what you think are still like living with roommates, and not because they like the lifestyle or because they want to, is because they really cannot physically, like I cannot afford to like live somewhere else without roommates.
In cities like Berlin, Munich, Hamburg, Frankfurt.
And it's in big cities, of course. Like in the smaller towns, I think it's less of an issue, but then you get like the thing of like in smaller towns, nobody wants to live there because either there's like no job opportunities or there's like really nothing to do, as in like, so you need to have like very specific lifestyle and a certain like type of person that's really like living there, because most people are, of course, they want to go like to the city, very clearly, because again, of like for a number of reasons.
Finding a place to live here has become a nightmare. Short supply, rising rents, and stiff competition. This already means that another reason that the overwhelming majority of people rent in large cities is just because the prices have made owning property really out of reach for the vast majority of people. The stories of how people got their apartments are all very similar, basically with a bit of luck. They were in the right place at the right time. And I myself, I only got my apartment because the first 2 people dropped out at the last minute and I was the next person on the list. And so finding an apartment is kind of like finding a job. You need to spend some time thinking about what makes you stand out and why you would be a good fit for this place.
I think that's crazy because it's like just for a job, like I can definitely understand that mindset because obviously someone's like hiring you for a certain kind of like job. But like for a house, it's like, come on, it's just a house. Like, who cares if I'm buying the house? I'm like doing whatever it is that I want to do with my house because now it's mine and you don't get to say in this. Maybe that's like that with that mindset, like I'm not getting, no one's giving me a house. But I think it's crazy because it's like, whatever, like who cares? If I'm buying the house, like it's not like, oh, this person stands out. It's like, I don't know, give me like, the best offer, the first grabs. I don't know if I'm selling. I don't know, that would be like my first thought. I wouldn't be like, like, give me your resume. Like, what do you think? Like, what are your aspirations? What are your long-term goals? It's like, who cares? Like, it just give me my money and that's it. Bye. I don't really want to know what you do with the house later.
Having a good salary is not enough. You need to make a good impression with the landlord, and also landlords are generally looking for reliable long-term renters. They don't want someone who's going to move out in in a year's time. Now, there are apartments catered specifically to this type of person, so if you are looking for something temporary, that is possible, but it's going to cost you more. And so be prepared for a very challenging house hunt. Secondly, the cost of living in general has just risen a lot. Now, I know this is not specific to Germany, but it's something that you need to take into consideration. Energy prices are, I think, the most expensive in Europe, if not the most, at least one of the most expensive in Europe.
Really?
Groceries have increased a lot in the last 2 years, and it's not unaffordable, but it's definitely not the cheap European alternative that it used to be. I was back in the UK recently, and the prices of groceries in the supermarket and the restaurant are very similar. You know, obviously there are regional differences. Some things are more expensive here, some things are cheaper. But when I moved here in 2011, prices across the board were significantly lower in Germany than they were in the UK. And I'm talking like 30 to 50% lower. Everything from housing to groceries, restaurants, hotels, travel, it was all significantly cheaper in the UK. And that is now just a thing of the past. Third,
it's crazy how he's like, I literally experienced it in real time, like inflation going up. It's like, yes, it's crazy that I mean, sad, obviously, but it's kind of crazy that you're like, well, I literally experienced the whole thing, like right in front of my very eyes.
And this is very important. Do not move here without a job lined up. It is an employer's market right now.
Good piece of advice, not just Germany, I think everywhere, because again, it's like, if I don't have the money, like if I don't have like a job lined up, how am I gonna like support myself in this city? Like, I think it's crazy. Maybe some people are not, you know, they do not have that train of thought, and they're just like, oh, something will come up. Would love to talk to that kind of people, because again, it's like, oh my god, aren't you scared? Are you gonna end up living like being homeless or something because you don't get a house? You don't get, well, if you don't get a job, you're not getting a house. So it's like, oh my god, I'm literally stranded in the middle of nowhere. I'm gonna have to be like sleeping under a bridge. Like, I don't know, like I'm so scared.
So getting a job is not easy. There is a bit of a mismatch in the market right now, with employers complaining that they can't find qualified staff. Now, Germany's job market is still quite rigid. And so just because you have qualifications or experiences made in another country, that doesn't mean that it will translate in Germany. There are still shortages in some sectors like healthcare, engineering, and trades. But for many roles, especially non-German speakers, it's tough. And so many immigrants who try to come here without a job already set up, they just kind of slide into short-term agency work.
I think I agree. I can see why. I don't really think like it sucks, but I think that's like what I would think it's normal, especially like he said, for like non-German speakers. I think your options are going to be like quite limited, unless that you have, again, like a very specific type of job that you already lined up. That, you know, it's like, yes, because they need like whatever, I speak Chinese, and you know, they need someone that speaks Chinese. It's like, I don't know, like something very specific. I would guess yes, of course, because the medium and talking about like you have to be in the right place at the right time. It's like, yes, if you don't speak German, like I'm guessing a lot of people, most of them are, because it's Germany, they're gonna be, well, you have to speak German. That's one of the, you know, like that's one of the basic things. So if you don't speak German, you're already like at a huge disadvantage. So of course, like I can see why it's like, no, we're not hiring you like now, because we're rather hire someone that already knows German, because, you know, it's just my logical train of thought.
Or what's known as Zeitarbeit, which I would not recommend. Yes, there are certain advantages. It's flexible. You are not tied to one employer. But it also means you have less benefits, and you are not really treated as an equal employee. You also have no security, as many of these contracts only go for a few months, not years. And also, Germany is not the best place for freelancers, creatives, or digital nomads. The country has very strong social support systems, but you will not get any of this if you are a freelancer. You will have to pay the complete sum of your own healthcare. You will not have access to unemployment benefit or any of the other benefits. You don't enjoy paid holiday or paid sick leave. And so you're paying the taxes, but you're not really getting the benefits that employees get. And so that is really another thing to bear in mind.
Well, that sucks, obviously, because I always have like the mindset of like, it doesn't matter like if you're paying higher taxes, but if you're seeing them reflected like in your quality of life, it's like, it's good. Like, you don't care. Most people will not care. Either you really do see their taxes are reflected back upon them. But if you're paying taxes and you're not seeing like, I'm not seeing results here, it's like, I can see like, well, that I wouldn't want to pay taxes, of course. It's like, why? What's the benefit of me paying this if I'm not getting to like reap the benefits?
Something else that you should know is that major German cities are industry specific. I see this as a major advantage. You know, the UK revolves around London, France revolves around Paris, but Germany has Berlin for politics and governance. They have Hamburg for trade, Cologne for media, Frankfurt for finance, Stuttgart for cars and engineering, and Munich for cars and industry. And so this is another thing to bear in mind when thinking about where you want to move to. Now, remote jobs do also exist, but large employers in Germany are not embracing this trend at all. On the contrary, many large employers have already mandated mandatory office days for their staff, and this looks like it's only going to increase in the future. Bureaucracy is still a beast. Anmeldung, appointments, visa paperwork, old school processes, they will test your patience. But beyond the paperwork, there's a deeper layer. How welcome you will feel, this all depends on where you move to. And I've talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to go into it here, but many immigrants find the Germans rude. They find them cold and unwelcoming. And so it's just a cultural difference, and it will take some getting used to. Most people can't handle the German directness, and they often feel personally attacked or offended on a daily basis. And this is something you're going to have to get used to if you move here. Also, the cries against...
Yes, because of course, it's like if you're moving to somewhere new, like you have to adapt. Like you're not changing their culture, how they interact, like socially. You're the newer there. You're the fresh fish like out of the water, and you're gonna have to adapt because if you're thinking of like moving there, permanently, obviously, if you're living there just temporarily and you're like, I'll live in a year, like, I don't really care. But if you're actually thinking about like, no, I think for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be living there. Whatever it is, Germany, whatever other city, place, country, whatsoever, like you actually need to learn how they socially like interact, and you need to know the rules of interaction and their cultural rules they have. Because you're going to have a really hard time if you don't. Like, you really do have to change, like, your mindset and be like, okay, this is how it's done here. I can't actually, like, I'm no one to actually tell them, like, no, don't do that. Because it's like, no, again, you're not from here. So you really do have to adapt. And again, it's going to make your life so much easier if you just adapt to whatever cultural thing and, how they interact socially. Because you're never going to adapt. You're never going to be happy if you don't. Obviously, again, not everything, because there are certain things that you're going to be like, wow, no, I absolutely cannot with this. Like, that's a hard limit for me. But in general, like, you should definitely try to emulate how, they do things there. So again, it's like, you're going to be happier. I promise you.
Immigration are growing in volume across Germany. So in big cities, international communities are more established, and so it's easier to integrate. But in smaller towns or more conservative regions, the tone is not particularly welcoming. And so anti-immigrant rhetoric has become louder, especially in political discourse and on social media. And so you may not experience hostility directly, but the atmosphere does matter. And so pay close attention to where you're moving. Some areas are far more open and diverse than others. And so this isn't about fear, it's just about being informed and making the right decision about where to set yourself up for success.
Always a good idea.
So Germany is still a great place to move to if you fit certain profiles. So if you have a job offer or you work in a high demand field, if you're coming with a family and you value safety, order, and education, if you are prepared to learn the language and to integrate, and if you are patient and realistic, you will probably get on fine here. But if you're hoping to figure it out once you land, or you're trying to escape problems back home without a plan, don't come. It's not going to work out well. So would I move here? Absolutely, but I come with different expectations. I'd understand that it's not easy anymore. I'd be prepared for loneliness, for delays, for cultural friction. And I'd come with a job in hand, a plan for learning the language, and a mindset focused on long-term integration. Because when it works, life can be a dream, but it's not automatic. You have to earn it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this video was of help. Let me know in the comments below what your experience has been and what your take is. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, I think those are very good pieces of advice, especially right at the end. But I think I find it like very interesting, like what he said at the end of the video of like, you really do have to come with a plan. Like you need to have like a job lined up. You have to know specifically like what city, fits my needs, or am I going to be like welcomed here? And also, of course, I'm prepared to like integrate completely. I'm willing to learn the language and the culture, and for people to, they're never going to see you as an equal, because I think that's pretty impossible. And I think maybe you can achieve this if you manage to live there for like 40 years or, like a great amount of years, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in the first like 5 or 10 years that you live somewhere else. But it's kind of like funny to me that he was like, you can't just come up with like, oh yeah, I'm moving to Germany with no plan, no job. I'll figure things out as I go. Because he was like, when he was talking about this, I was like, oh, so it's like Germany, like the country in general. Like people tend to be very organized, and they tend to know like what's up with beforehand. It's like, oh, what are we doing now? Like we're going to do this, and there's like a certain amount of steps, and we're going to be, again, it's very organized. And I think it's funny that he's like, you really do have to adapt, like even in the mindset of like, no, you can't just like go around willy-nilly and be like, whatever, I'll figure things out as I go. It's chill. It's like, no. You really need to have like a plan here. And he's like, this is your first lesson into like being German. You really do have to plan, you have to organize, and you can just go around just like moving freely. He's like, okay, well, first lesson learned. Hopefully some people will learn it before they actually move there, and they don't have to learn the hard way of like, wow, I learned, but I learned in like the worst possible way, which was, like having a really hard time there. But I think it's really like interesting to me, because it's like at the end of the day, like he speaks about like the cons of like, maybe it's like the prices have gone up, like the housing is a nightmare. You already need to have a job. You also need to learn German. Like there's a lot of things that could be seen as negatives, maybe if not outright negative, a little bit like neutral, but leaning towards like not positive either. It's just like, well, it's sort of like in the middle. But it's like, then at the end he's like, but again, I still consider like it's a good idea. Like for me, like for his sort of like point of view, he's like, I would move here again. I would do it all again because I think it's worth it. Which I think again, at the end of the day, I think that's really what matters. And you really have to like weigh like all these options and be like, okay, am I willing to again have a really hard time for like a number of probably years? But if the end, like, again, the returns that I'm going to get are going to be, like, better where I am, or better at, like, certain places that I'm, like, planning on moving to. And I think, again, it's like, if the answer is yes, like, I do believe it's worth it, then yes, of course, like, take the leap and go there. If it, you're unsure, or you're like, wow, you know what, I don't really know if I'm willing to, like, pay the price. It's like, well, then maybe not. I don't really like the thing about, like, the saying of, like, I can't remember how it is, but it's like great, like it's similar to like how the good things take time, something of the sort, but it's not really like that. Of like anything like worth the effort, like, oh, it's hard. I don't know if I agree specifically with that, because I think it's like, well, that's just like a way of like letting you like, well, when you're like, wow, I'm feeling so like kicked down or let down, and I'm like, because I have like a specific like goal or term in mind, and I'm having a hard time like getting there. I think usually people tell you that. It's like, oh, like keep struggling because it's going to be worth it at the end. I don't know how good like that mindset and that mentality is, because I think can lead to like, it's a slippery slope of like, well, we're suffering, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good for a reason. Not always, but I think it's good. Like, I think at the end, again, maybe it's like very specific doses. Not everything like worth your while is going to be like a sacrifice, but a lot of things definitely are, which again is like, I don't really like that mindset, but it's true that a lot of things actually are like that. You have to like make a lot of like sacrifices, a lot of commitments, and you really do have to work hard, but like you're gonna get like great things in return because you worked hard. So it is a little bit of that. So I don't really, I started by saying I don't really know, like I don't really like that saying. But I can see why, like, people use it. Because, again, it's, like, maybe not dreams, but, again, it's, like, very goal. Like, you have, like, a goal, and you always have to put the work in. Because if you don't really work, then, it's not gonna, like, fall from the sky. So it is a little bit of that. Again, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna have to, like, you're gonna have to do probably a lot of, like, you have to take a lot of, like, sacrifices. But you have to be willing to do them. Because I think, again, if at the end of the day, those sacrifices and that hardship is gonna be worth it to you, then yes, absolutely go there and create a plan and work towards this, start learning German, try to get a job there. And I think probably those are like the hardest things. And once you get that, it's like, okay, then I'm gonna be able to like find housing, and I'm gonna have like my little plan. And of course, do your research. Super important. It's like, do your research on like what cities specifically are gonna be the right fit for you, and not just like the right fit as in, oh, I love this city, like I can see myself living here. No, actually, like he said, like I think Munich is like where there's like the vehicles, and I think like I know Hamburg is where there's the trades and probably sales. Like you really do have to do your own research and see like what kind of cities fit for my specific like set of skills or goals, and pick one, and try to make it there. It's like, well, it's like if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. That's what they say about New York. But maybe it's Germany. Maybe I should change it. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.